What's good, YouTube? I'm back, and I just want to talk about the Thunder and their future and kind of see what's going to be happening with them because they're right now currently the 6th seed right now, but they're only one game above the Spurs and the Clippers. But then again, they've played one less game than them, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how this works out. Um, I th- I'm going to talk about also if I believe that they'll be good in the playoffs and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I guess let's get started. So obviously we all know Russell Westbrook and Paul George are like the leaders of this team. I kind of want to talk about Westbrook because it's kind of interesting to see because he puts up these triple doubles because he's averaging a triple double for the third straight season, and that's ridiculous. That is really good, but does it lead to winning basketball? And that's the big question because that's the biggest knock on Westbrook. His IQ at the end of games, bad shot selection, and just shot chucking in general when he's not having a great game. That's the concerns when it comes to Westbrook because he's a very ball dominant player. And he has the help too. Paul George is a good player. He's a bit inconsistent. This year he's been better though, but the past 15 games Paul George has not been the greatest, and that's when they've been on their losing streak. So I kind of want to talk about how Paul George also is going to be the key to winning playoff series and stuff like that. But basically, I do think Westbrook is overrated to a degree, but at the same time, I don't think it's as drastic as people think. Like Colin Cowherd, all right, that guy is so dumb. Even when it's just talking about Westbrook or just other things in general, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But basically, I think Westbrook's leadership is kind of underrated to the point where it can kind of fuel this team. But I do think that he is a little overrated because sometimes he's the reason why they lose sometimes, and it's because of his IQ down the stretch or stat padding or anything like that. I do think that has a play in it, but I don't think it's as significant as people make it out to be. Now, Paul George is kind of interesting because he's had a very good season overall. He's averaging 28 points on really good efficiency, and he's in the MVP race. But the thing is, the past 15 games, he hasn't been very good, and the Thunder have been on a losing streak. And as of right now, they are currently the 6th seed. They're only one game ahead, as like I said, but I don't know where these guys are going to finish, so therefore I don't know who they're going to play in the first round. So I'm kind of interested to see how this goes because if they play the Warriors in the first round, that's going to be a fun series. But at the same time, we all know the Warriors are going to win. So it's not really. I think it's more hope that the Thunder make it a good series because if Paul George doesn't show up, it's going to be done because I don't trust Westbrook. I think he will show up because he's that good of a player, but that doesn't mean I trust him to show up. And if anything, Paul George needs to. And if Westbrook and Paul George play like they did in the series against Utah, they're not going to win. It's just that simple. They need to show up for this series. Now, it'll be kind of interesting to see if they play the Nuggets and the Rockets. Now, if they play the Nuggets, I could see them beating the Nuggets, and here's why. The Nuggets are extremely young, and they don't really have veterans on their team, but can those young guys step up? And I think Jokic will show out because he's been having an MVP season as well, but that's not exactly who I'm talking about. I'm more concerned on Gary Harris and Jamal Murray because they can be inconsistent sometimes, and I don't know if I can really trust them come playoff time. They're good players, don't get me wrong, but it's their first year being in the playoffs like this, and it'll just be kind of interesting to see because the Thunder are no slouch. I mean, they're only 4 to 6 games separating the 8. Well, actually, outside of the Warriors, separating the Clippers from the Nuggets. It's like a 7-game difference. It's not that significant, and obviously that's due to the West being so stacked. But you can't really. What I'm trying to say is you can't count any teams out. And I think the Thunder could realistically beat the Nuggets, my bad. Now, for the Rockets, I do think the Rockets will show out and beat them. I just think James Harden, no one can guard James Harden. Chris Paul, a healthy Chris Paul, they're going to do their thing. Clint Capella is going to dominate the boards. Now, don't sleep on Steven Adams. I think he will be a defensive presence and a rebounding presence in any series. I think he's extremely underrated. I'm going to say that. But I don't think he's that skilled offensively, which can kind of hold him back as a stock, but at the same time, his presence is there for this Thunder's team, and I think it's a very good one. But I just don't see them beating the Rockets after seeing what they did last year. And when this team catches on fire, no one can guard the Rockets. No one can guard Harden. On top of that, when you try and do something, who just kick it out to PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, and they don't miss very often. And it'll be kind of interesting to see how they play them. Now, if you watch the Milwaukee Rockets game, you could see what their game plan was. And it was basically to prevent Harden from shooting a bunch of step-back threes. And I think if they have the right game plan, they can beat the Rockets, but I just don't trust their Westbrook and Paul George enough to beat Harden and Chris Paul. Now, yes, Harden does struggle in the playoffs. It's a real thing. Harden sometimes doesn't show up for the playoffs. That's a real thing, but that's a topic for a different discussion. But what I'm trying to say is he at least will sort of do his thing. Maybe it's not on the best efficiency, but there are games where Paul George and Russell Westbrook just completely don't show up. And I do believe in Paul George this year, but at the same time, he's known for being an inconsistent player. So you can't really fault me for having these doubts about this team. It's just kind of disappointing to see the Thunder kind of go on this losing streak right at the end of the year when they were so good throughout the year. But I do believe in Paul George, but at the same time, it's just hard to trust this team. And I think Paul George is extremely underrated. He's probably been the best two-way player in the league this year. And I know he's had that 15-game stretch where they just weren't good. But if they can get it together by playoffs time, this can be a dangerous team. And I don't care if they are particularly a lower seed. You can't sleep on them. Because defensively, this is a real team. These guys are a top, 3 to 5 defensive team, somewhere around that. So I don't think they should be slept on. But at the same time, the two stars have to show up. And it's just that simple. Basically, those two don't show up, they don't win. If they show up, I think they have a good chance of winning. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I hope you guys enjoy this video.